The mystery that still echoes. The Beaumont children case. Australia, 1966. A summer of sunlight, calm beaches, and a country that still believed nothing bad could happen here. On January 26th, Australia Day, 9-year-old Jane Beaumont, her sister Arnna, and their little brother Grant left home for the beach. It was a short bus ride, a trip they had taken many times before. That afternoon, the bus came back, but the children didn't. Within hours, the search began. Hundreds of officers, volunteers, even soldiers combing the dunes and shoreline. Yet, not a single clue was found. No footprints, no belongings, no trace at all. The disappearance of the Beaumont children shattered a nation's sense of safety. It marked the day Australia lost its innocence and gained one of the most haunting mysteries in its history. This is their story. It was the height of summer in Adelaide, South Australia, January 26, 1966. Australia Day, a public holiday, cloudless sky, temperatures climbing past 40 degrees Celsius. Families crowded the beaches, barbecues burned in the parks, and the coastline shimmered under the heat. Australia in the 1960s felt safe, comfortable, predictable, proud of its peace. Crime was distant. Children played freely in the streets until dusk, and every parent believed the world was kind. In the quiet suburb of Somerton Park, just a few minutes from the sea, the Beaumont family lived an ordinary life. Jim Beaumont, a traveling salesman, was away on business that week. His wife, Nancy, managed the home and their 3 children. Jane, aged 9, mature and sensible beyond her years. Arnna, 7, lively and curious. And Grant, 4, the youngest and most adored. That morning, the children woke early. The summer air was already thick with heat, and the sound of distant waves drifted through the open windows. Going to Glenelg Beach had become part of their routine. A short bus ride, a few hours of swimming and ice cream, and they would be home by lunchtime. Nancy had allowed them to make the trip before. Jane, the eldest, was considered responsible enough to watch her brother and sister. They left the house around 8:30 a.m., carrying towels, small bags, and a few coins for snacks. Nancy watched them walk to the bus stop 100 yards from the house and remembered seeing Jane turn back to wave. They boarded the 8:45 bus, smiling and excited. It was the last time anyone in their family would ever see them. The bus reached Glenelg Beach a little after 10 a.m. Witnesses later recalled seeing the 3 siblings playing in the shallows near the jetty, splashing in the surf and chasing each other through the sand. Around 11 a.m., they were spotted buying food at a kiosk, meat pies and soft drinks, and a small pastry Jane had never purchased before. The shopkeeper, Mrs. Thompson, noted something odd. Jane paid with a £1 note, far more than Nancy had given them. Investigators would later conclude that someone else must have provided the money. Several people that day described the children interacting with a tall, thin, blond man, somewhere in his mid-30s, athletic build, tanned. He seemed friendly, at ease, even playful, helping the children build a sandcastle, talking to them as if they already knew each other. One woman said she saw the group gathered on a towel, laughing. Another remembered the man giving Grant a piggyback ride near the shoreline. Nothing about it seemed alarming at the time. It was a public place, surrounded by families. No one could imagine danger. Around 12:15 p.m., the weather shifted. The heat grew oppressive, and many beachgoers began to pack up. Witnesses said the Beaumont children were still with the blonde man, watching as he pulled on trousers over his swimsuit, as though preparing to leave. That was the last verified sighting. The bus that should have carried them home departed Glenelg around 2 p.m. Nancy expected to hear the familiar rumble outside the house a few minutes later. When it passed without stopping, she assumed they might have caught the next one. She began to tidy the house, checked the clock, waited. By 3 o'clock, she felt uneasy. By 4 o'clock, she was pacing near the window, scanning each approaching bus. By 5 o'clock, panic had set in. At first, Nancy called neighbors, then hospitals. She even walked to the nearby shops, hoping to see them on the street. Finally, shortly before 7 p.m., she contacted the police. Officers arrived and took a brief statement but assured her the children had likely stayed out late because of the holiday crowds. They promised to look into it if they weren't home by morning. That assumption, casual, dismissive, would become the investigation's first critical error. As darkness spread across Adelaide, the beach that had been alive with laughter just hours earlier turned silent. Searchlights swept across empty sand, waves breaking against the pier. 3 small children were missing in one of the safest cities in the world, and no one had the faintest idea where they had gone. In the days following the disappearance, the investigation produced an avalanche of information, yet none of it could be proven. Detectives filled pages of notebooks with interviews, timelines, and possible sightings, but the deeper they went, the less sense the puzzle made. It wasn't the lack of effort that doomed the case. It was the absence of anything concrete to build on. There were no footprints traced beyond the dunes, no discarded towels or clothing found anywhere along the beach. The children's bags and shoes had vanished. Even the small coins Nancy had given them were never recovered. In cases like this, detectives rely on a trail, a single belonging, a piece of fabric, a witness who saw something no one else noticed. But here there was nothing. 3 children had evaporated in daylight, leaving no physical mark on the world. Investigators built a detailed timeline of January 26th, hoping the truth would emerge from precision. The children left home at 8:30 a.m., boarded the 8:45 bus, and arrived at Glenelg around 10. They were seen buying lunch around 11 and playing in the shallows before midday. By 12:15, the weather grew hotter, and the crowd began to thin. Yet a small number of witnesses later claimed they had seen the Beaumont children after 12:30, walking away from the beach, still accompanied by the same blonde man. One postal worker insisted he saw them crossing Jetty Road at around 3 p.m., the children laughing as if nothing were wrong. But the reliability of that statement remains disputed. The time he gave was inconsistent with the bus schedules and with the accounts of others who had left the area earlier. If true, it would mean the children were alive for several hours after they were last officially seen, an unexplained gap of time that still haunts the investigation. Detectives tried to verify the postman's claim by tracing possible routes the man and the children might have taken. They searched nearby parks, back streets, and even the Patawalanka boat haven, where it was rumored a man had been seen changing clothes that afternoon. Nothing matched. The composite sketch released days later, tall, lean, tanned, fair-haired, led to hundreds of calls but no identification. The blonde man became an abstraction, a description without a person, an image without a name. Officers even tested theories involving vehicles: a station wagon parked near the foreshore, a small boat reported offshore, but no credible connection was found. Not a single photograph from that busy public beach captured the children or the man beside them. This was the mid-1960s. Cameras were rare, and security footage didn't exist. The modern tools investigators now rely on simply weren't available. By early February, frustration within the task force had reached breaking point. Every lead turned into contradiction. Every eyewitness remembered the day slightly differently. The color of the man's towel, the direction they walked, even the children's clothing. Some swore they saw them leave the beach on foot. Others claimed they boarded a bus. One witness said she saw the blonde man with a bundle wrapped in towels, but she couldn't say what it was. The inconsistency of human memory, magnified by chaos, heat, and hindsight, had become the investigation's greatest enemy. The evidence board in the Glenelg police station grew chaotic. Photos, names, maps, red strings connecting nothing to nothing. Detectives worked through the nights, convinced they were missing something obvious. But the facts refused to align. When Chief Inspector Len Brown faced the press again that week, he spoke carefully. "We have every resource available in the search," he said, "but we have not found any indication of where these children may be." It was the most chilling phrase of all: no indication. The country's most visible missing persons case had left behind no visible truth. As weeks turned into months, the investigation began to lose direction. There were no new witnesses, no physical evidence, and no suspects with a clear motive. The Beaumont case had entered a dangerous phase, the vacuum where facts fade and fantasies begin. The first false claims arrived only days after the headlines broke. Psychics from across the country offered their visions. Some said the children were hidden in caves, others that they were taken overseas. Each revelation brought another distraction, another waste of time for detectives already running out of leads. Newspapers, desperate for updates, published nearly every rumor. What had started as a rescue mission was slowly turning into a spectacle. In March 1966, the Beaumont family received the first of several anonymous letters. The writer claimed the children were alive, living with a man who had adopted them, and that they were being cared for in secrecy. The letter ended with a demand. If the family truly wanted to see the children again, they were to bring money and leave it in a locker at the Adelaide railway station. Police followed the instructions in complete silence. Detectives watched the locker from hidden positions for hours. No one came. Weeks later, a second letter arrived, supposedly written by Jane Beaumont herself. The handwriting was childlike, carefully imitated. It said that she and her siblings were happy and safe, and that the man would return them soon. The family's hopes soared. For the first time since that January morning, Nancy allowed herself to believe her children might still be alive. The man behind the letters proposed one final meeting. He told the Beaumonts to wait at a specific park in Glenelg. Police disguised themselves as bystanders and staked out the area. The family waited for hours. No one came. When investigators traced the handwriting, they discovered the author was a local university student, a prankster, who later admitted he wanted to see if the police would fall for it. The confession destroyed what little hope the Beaumonts had left. The hoax had reopened wounds that had barely begun to close. The media reported the story in brutal detail, splashing the parents' humiliation across the front pages. What the public saw as a strange curiosity had become, for Nancy and Jim Beaumont, an unending nightmare, strangers using their children's names for amusement. Over the next 2 years, more letters arrived, some claiming to know where the bodies were buried, others claiming to have seen the children grown up in distant towns. Every one of them was investigated. Everyone was false. Detectives followed trails to abandoned quarries, empty basements, even outback caves. Nothing ever appeared. By late 1968, the South Australian police admitted publicly that they had no credible evidence of the children's fate. The file had swollen to thousands of pages, but none of it brought them closer to the truth. The early urgency had faded. The case was no longer about finding 3 missing children, but about chasing shadows. For the Beaumont family, the attention turned poisonous. Journalists camped outside their home. Strangers knocked on their door at night, claiming to have seen visions or dreams about where the children were. Every knock felt like another cruel echo, a cycle of hope, exposure, and silence. Nancy stopped answering the phone. Jim stopped giving interviews. Behind closed curtains, the couple faced the unbearable stillness of a house that had once been filled with laughter. The world had moved on, but for them, time had stopped on that bright summer morning in 1966. As the sun set over Adelaide, the search entered its first long night. Police scoured the beaches, the dunes, and the neighborhoods, but there were no footprints, no belongings, no witnesses who could explain how 3 children disappeared in daylight. The Beaumont case was no longer a missing persons report. It had become a national mystery, one that would evolve over decades, spawning theories, suspects, and questions that remain unanswered even today. In the next part, we'll examine the investigation's turning points, the false letters, the prime suspects, and the decades of speculation that followed. To be continued. Every secret waits to be revealed. Every silence that carries an echo. Every story is waiting to be told. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice matters. Subscribe and step into the echoes of truth.